Have you ever thought about what happens when you lose the ability to dream? I lost my ability to dream the day that my dad jumped off of the top of a high-rise apartment in Queens, New York. It's 1 week before Christmas. I was 12 years old. My dad was 32 when he committed suicide. I froze as soon as I heard that information. What did I do? Oh my God, what did I do? My last interaction with my dad, I didn't talk to him. See, I wanted a new pair of high-top Air Force Ones, crisp white. And I so wanted these sneakers, and when I couldn't get them, I just blamed my father. So for 2 days, I didn't talk to him. And I actually took pride in being so petty and not talking to him at the moment. Little did I know I would regret that for the rest of my life. Did you know that trauma originates from a Greek word meaning wounded? I didn't know that either. But I was wounded. I was absolutely wounded. Trauma had interrupted my ability to dream. I couldn't see into the future. Do you know what society thinks of a black boy without a father? How about in 1987? I saw probably 1,000 futures within 10 seconds, and I didn't want any of them. So I wanted something worse than death. I wanted simply to not exist. And I allowed that to seep inside of me for a long time. Within months, I entered into a hospital for kids to deal with their mental illness. I was the youngest at 12, and I was the only black boy out of 20 or so kids. I think one of the things that stands out the most about that experience is that while the therapy was absolutely beneficial and necessary, it's my interactions with the other kids that stood out the most to me. See, as we entered into the hospital, we were all there for the same reason. We were there because of our suicidal ideations and our desire to not be there. I thought of it as a deficit, but some of the other kids didn't think of it. They were just like, oh, I'm here, I'll be okay. I remember one kid specifically, he's like, I'm just gonna grow my hair, wear khakis, and go work for the man. And I'm like, dude, I'm gonna punch you. Like, that is not my world. See, it's diametrically different. In my world, when you have flaws, you are worthless. You have no value. But then it took me a while to understand that's the mindset of self-worth. Just understanding that as long as you have flaws, you still have value. And I took that to heart because that meant a lot to me. When I left the hospital, I was a better person, more attuned, and I had this concept of self-worth. But it made me understand one very simple point. I devalued myself so much before, and even after my father's death. It was going to take a lot for me just to get to a break-even. And that break-even point was going to allow me to dream again. So as I left the hospital, I decided that I would make self-worth one of my goals because the world still saw me as a flawed black boy. I became the friend that wanted you to achieve your dreams. I became the relative that wanted you to achieve your dreams. I even used it in my professional career. As I entered into financial services, one of the things that I took into account was that I could help with self-worth. I could help people understand their own value. And I would compete against those financial advisors that chose a net worth, which is simply assets and liabilities. And most people in this country, more than half, have a negative net worth simply because they don't have assets like a house. So one of the things that I noticed all the time is that we miss the people. And this was highlighted in 2008 after the financial crisis. Did you hear the despair? Did you hear the grief as people lost their homes? I heard my colleagues at that same exact time saying it's their fault They shouldn't have bought these mortgages. They shouldn't have bought these houses. How dare you talk to people? How dare you talk about people like that when they're just trying to create better opportunities for their family? When they just lost their dream? When they just lost their legacy? How do you do that? That's when I realized it was time, because they couldn't see the same thing I could see. They couldn't see that when dreams are deferred, they become diseases of despair, a category of death that includes suicide, drug overdoses, and alcoholic liver diseases. Despair had taken my dad. It's close to taking me. And I didn't want it to take anybody else. They didn't know that since 2000, per 100,000 people, the number of drug overdoses had increased by 265%. They didn't know that since 2000, that same 100,000 cohort had seen an increase of 35% in suicides. And when you add in the liver alcoholic diseases, you actually just have a lot of despair. I couldn't allow that. And so over the next couple of years, I really just decided that it was time to find a different way. And I found this path with something called financial therapy. Financial therapy combines financial psychology and financial planning. So that way you're better able to understand your emotional relationship to the financial planning concepts that are presented in front of you. Financial therapy helps you communicate, behave, operate differently in your world with money and your emotional relationship. But more than anything else, financial therapy helps with self-worth. It allows you to actually understand and appreciate communication, for people to be heard, healed, and then helped. And so in 2018, I left corporate America to start on a path of advocating and teaching financial therapy. And it's been an outstanding journey. I found my tribe. It's like a caterpillar that becomes a butterfly. I'm different, but I'm the same. I have better perspective. What I'd like to share with you is over those 6 years now, I have actually had some great observations that I want to share with you about financial therapy. One, financial therapy should be a prerequisite for all financial education. It's easy to acknowledge that everyone needs financial education, but it doesn't exist. And as a result of it not existing in abundance, we really have to help people unravel their financial behavior before we teach new information. I've also noticed in teaching, especially in finance and in business in particular, how many students arrive at their senior year with so little self-worth. How is it that you can go through a finance degree and it's easier for you to calculate a stock value or a bond value than it is for you to calculate your own value? We have to do more to incorporate behavioral sciences inside of business curriculums. And to the financial services industry, the industry that I spent more than 20 years in, two thoughts. One, as my grandmother would say, you need prayer. You do. But you also need empathy. And I can help with the empathy. What if, for example, instead of hiring business people and teaching them empathy, what if we hired social workers and therapists and taught them money concepts? How do you think those conversations would go? Probably a little bit different, right? Langston Hughes has this poem, Harlem, in which there is a provocative question. What happens to a dream deferred? It's not so much a provocative question as it is an action plan, a call to action. We know what happens to dreams deferred. They become diseases of despair. And if we have an opportunity to cure that with conversation that allows people to be heard and healed and helped, then why wouldn't we do it? I hope that you can join me in continuing to spread that message, that self-worth is always going to be more powerful than net worth. Thank you so much for your time.